Do not attempt to repeat or reenact anything in this report. This video is strictly for education and entertainment purposes. Reality is a five-spoked wheel. Submitted to Erowid on October 30th, 2005 by Vulpine. 10 times Salvia Divinorum extract ingested via smoking. A friend gave me some 10 times Salvia Divinorum, which was a mixture of homegrown leaf strengthened with a purchased extract. I believe my previous experiences were also with a 10 times extract, although it may have only been a 5 times. I had kept it tucked away for future use. Tonight, my friend sent me a trip report from a Salvia user in his household, which sparked the notion that it was the right time. Another issue was that I have recently been experiencing a resurgence of my fear of mortality and death, perhaps because my usual ritual for coming to acceptance, Burning Flipside, a regional Burning Man event, was less than transcendent for me this year. I thought that perhaps the loss of ego I had found in previous Salvia experiences might help. Finally, one of the oddest notions that came to me in the immediate aftermath of a recent DMT trip, while still experiencing psychological effects, was the idea that Salvia and DMT were seeded on Earth and/or allowed communication with opposing extraterrestrial extraplanar forces. I didn't expect this trip to lend any further polish to that weird idea, and it didn't, but it was definitely on my mind. I did my best to prepare the environment. I turned off my computer and the AC because I remembered that distracting noises had been annoying during previous experiences. Expecting to take several hits, I prepared a sizable bowl in my bong. I turned off all the lights, but was once again struck by the fact that my apartment just isn't completely dark, even with the lights out. There is too much ambient light. I found a blindfold I keep for kinky purposes and put it on my head without covering my eyes, intending to pull it over my face as the trip came on to shut out all light. My cat came over as I was about to take a hit, and I hoped she wouldn't bug me during the trip, but I actually had no awareness of her until some semblance of normal consciousness returned. I lifted up the bong and the lighter. I took a strong, deep hit and held it, expecting it to be the first of 2 or 3. As I held my breath and counted to 60 in my head, I watched the blinking lights on my cable modem, which I had not turned off. Across the apartment, I noticed they seemed to be receding far into the distance. A thought remembered clearly, this is coming on very quickly. I don't think I'm going to have time for a second or third hit. Another thought followed, I didn't set my intentions for this trip in my head as clearly as I normally try to do before taking a psychedelic. I exhaled, and all concrete thought was obliterated. As is so often the case with this kind of experience, the very act of putting it into concrete language diminishes it. The very nature of the psychedelic experience, by its unique otherness from everyday experience, means that it cannot be properly defined using everyday language. Often, when coming up on a more gradual entheogen like mushrooms, I think, oh yes, this is what it's really like to be here, because I realize again how much my recollections and writings after the fact can only pale in comparison to the reality, or maybe more properly, the unreality of tripping. This drastic shift is perhaps made all the more stark by the fact that on this Salvia trip, as is so common with this drug, I completely forgot that I had taken anything. Indeed, I forgot so deeply that maybe I couldn't even have explained, to the extent I could have explained anything, that such a class of substances we call drugs, or psychedelics, or entheogens, or whatever, even existed. I set the bong down, and some part of me was aware that my torso was falling back so that I would lie prone on the bed. only it seemed like an incredibly long fall. A very long fall indeed. I don't know if I actually pulled the blindfold on completely. Because my sense of time was temporarily non-functional, the rest of this paragraph seemed to happen, or coexist, simultaneously. All statements were true at once. I was a five-pointed wheel. Reality itself was the five-spoked wheel. It was actually not flat in the way a wheel is flat. It had infinite depth, as each spoke of the wheel was a long shelf stretching into the distance. It was kind of like a paddle wheel on a boat, except each of the five buckets was infinitely long and deep. I was actually a consciousness inside the tumbling object, rotating in its chambers while aware of all the chambers. They were full of light and beautiful, riotous colors. As I tumbled in my colorful bucket, through an opening in my chamber, I could occasionally see out into another world, the base or real reality. What I could see of this world was a grassy green plain upon which an infinite number of feet, wearing sneakers, were moving, engaged in the act of rolling or rotating the bizarre wheeled object I was inside. I could even hear the feet striking the ground and feel the vibration from all those marching feet in my body. I became cognizant that my entire life, or what I had perceived it to be, all 27 years, was actually an illusion. It was merely a fancy I had generated while watching the interplay of light, color, and shadow in my bucket. Any minute now, I would be tumbled out onto the grass, forever lost from this false, comfortable reality, and loosed into the base reality outside, forever cut off from the illusion of the life I was used to. A profound sense of panic and fear came over me. I didn't want to be cut off from the life I had known. I really liked it. I began to struggle and flail in my chamber, trying to pull myself away from the opening. If I pulled away at just the right moment, I could return to the reality I was familiar with. If only I could just... Some tiny semblance of normality returned. Remember, all of the above occurred to me within the space of minutes or seconds of normal time. As I again became aware, I was lying on my bed with a blindfold on my face, I think only partly covering my eyes, which I removed with great effort. The memory of smoking a hit of very potent Salvia Divinorum slowly, very dimly, struggled back into my mind, as if for reassurance. But still with little conscious thought, I groped for the bong and somehow found it without knocking it over. The panic and fear faded, but the room kept threatening to continue its maddening rotation. Everything was jiggly and turning. It felt stiflingly hot in my apartment. Still not fully sober, I got to my feet and managed to turn the AC back on. I had the fleeting notion, obviously false, that for the last several minutes I hadn't been breathing at all. Realizing I shouldn't be moving much yet, I sat for a few moments in the chair by my computer before I had enough balance and togetherness to go out onto my deck for fresh air. I sat by the door for a bit, breathing the humid but gently breezy night air, then went to lean on my balcony and observe the world. Another fleeting, irrational thought. What if someone sees me on drugs and calls the cops? This paranoid impracticality was quickly suppressed by the everyday logic that there is nothing about a shirtless man leaning on his balcony to suggest drug use or to otherwise merit a call to the police. Probably because I was fighting so hard against the effects of the drug, which at the time didn't seem pleasant at all. The come-down seemed to take much longer. I went back inside and petted the cat while sitting on the small bed in my living room that I mostly use as a couch. I thought about the notion I'd heard secondhand from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which suggests that when you die, entities come whose job it is to dismantle your ego, what makes you the person you are. If you are ready for them, they appear as angels, but if you struggle, they seem to be demons. That night, they had definitely been demons rather than angels. I decided to go for a walk. I felt trapped inside the four walls of my apartment, and even more so, inside the boundaries of my skull. A peculiar feeling. I managed to find a shirt, shoes, and my keys. I walked around my apartment complex, then decided I needed a shower to cool down and cleanse myself. I walked to the corner store and got some cold iced tea and a bar of soap since I had run out. I felt more stable and balanced now, well enough grounded, but still distanced from reality, as if watching everything from a remove. The shower was very refreshing and pretty much cleansed the rest of the weirdness, bringing me more or less back down to earth and leaving the customary feeling of groundedness I usually have. After Salvia trips, I feel quite alive and very glad and relieved to be so. This is a good feeling. However, I don't think I've achieved increased acceptance of the impermanence of all things, what my new acquaintance earlier tonight referred to on IM as the law of undulation. While I stood on my deck, I was certain I wouldn't want to try Salvia again for a while. However, now I think I'll probably go back sometime soon with the intention to let go more fully and try to accept the angels as angels. Thank you for tuning in to this report. If you enjoyed what you listened to, feel free to like the video or subscribe to keep up to date and in the community.